We are here with Greg Brockman. He is the president and one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and we get the opportunity to chat with him, ask him some follow-up questions following Sam Altman's keynote, kicking off the day. So, Greg, thank you so much for being here and for helping millions of people figure out what the heck is coming next.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Happy to chat.
So you were the founding engineer and first CTO at Stripe. You were on a mission to become the best engineer in the world. If you were meeting with the best engineer in the world, and maybe it's you, what is the best engineer in the world doing right now?
And then building with Codex. But I mean, I think that being in AI is just such an incredible opportunity right now. And I think that we've very much been seeing that people who are engineers in startups or in other domains, HFT, anything like that, coming into AI can have this massive impact. And so I think that the best engineering is possible and is really rewarded within AI.
Do you have like specific features that you're thinking about when you think of the best engineer that is super ahead of the curve? Like day to day, what are they doing?
Well, I guess the way that I think about it, I mean, I can't comment necessarily on every engineer. I can talk about my own workflow.
Yeah.
Right. So the way that I work is that I am constantly context switching. Right. So I'll like be sort of, writing some function or something, and I'll hit a little mental block. I'm like, oh, exactly how should this be structured? What should this abstraction be? Something like that. And I'll flip to Slack for like 10 seconds, and then I'll flip back, or I'll go to email. And it's just like, I find this constant reset is something that means that I can background process a problem. And then by the time I get back to it, I know the answer. And so I think it's just about really about iteration speed, about problem flux, and just trying to get as much context and as much speed as possible.
God, this reminds me of when people would go to sleep with a math problem in their head in high school, and they would wake up and it would be solved. But you're doing that while awake.
Yes, and I actually literally did the fall asleep. I had this research problem I'd been working on in high school in math for months. And I remember I was—
For math's last theorem or something?
It wasn't quite that advanced. It was a problem in Ducci sequences, which is pretty cool stuff. But I remember falling asleep, and I was half asleep, and I saw the answer. It was this phenomenal experience. I remember feeling like I need to figure out how to replicate this. And so there is something about your subconscious just chewing on a problem.
So almost like early exposure is one of the most helpful things. So getting in practice cycles is definitely one of those.
I think so, right? And I think it's also it's just doing. I think the most important thing if you're starting out is not to be afraid, right? You write some code, it doesn't work, fine. There's no consequence to it, right? I think it's really about trying to find projects where you can learn, where you're a little bit uncomfortable, right? And where you can just go and try. And especially with tools like Codex, it is just so much more accessible to get into programming.
For people, when I was showing them ChatGPT and they had never seen it before, more often than not, I would ask it to write a poem about their hobby. And that was just a really fast way of seeing the magic. Is there a do X for Y that is a great starter spot for Codex users?
Well, Codex is incredible at front-end engineering.
Yeah.
And so, I have a particular hobby project that I started working on, the first time I built it, and I actually built it myself, was back in 2008 or something, which is a competitive chatbot game. So I call it a reverse Turing test, right? Traditional Turing test, you have two human participants, and one of them is a judge, one of them is a player, and the goal is for the judge to be able to tell, are they talking to a human or an AI? Now, in my competitive reverse Turing test, the way that it works is that you are hooked up to two terminals, each player. One is your opponent, a human, one is an AI. Your goal is to tell which one's which before your opponent does the same.
Okay.
Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that the optimal strategy for the bot is to act kind of bot-like, or for the human is to act kind of bot-like, right? Because you don't want to sort of distinguish whether or not you are the human, but also to ask somewhat discerning questions to figure out, is your opponent that or not? And so back in 2008, I remember I wrote this heuristic-based bot that would replay conversations from its database that were similar to the ones that it was having currently. And I got a 30 or 40% win rate. And so it shows you that it was just a cool problem, it was a cool setup. The reason I bring this up is that I've actually started using this as just a test of vibe coding, right? Just be describe that to an AI, and it made versions of that with 0 lines of code written by myself that are like 10x better than the thing that I wrote back in the day.
Really? And when you see that happen, you're excited because you're adding on new things, you're bummed because it took your best idea and just did it.
I mean, for me, it feels so empowering because I remember the struggle of implementing this back in the day.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of CS fundamentals I did not know. Like, for example, serialization was something I'd not heard of, like JSON, JSON formatting of something, or whatever your favorite serialization library is. And I remember I just invented my own, like, okay, I'll like have this like secret delimiter. There was this like sequence of characters that would be unlikely to
not
occur.
A comma. Yeah.
Exactly. I can't tell you what it is because then you'd be able to break my serialization scheme, and I would just use that to separate records. And it's just like a concept where you're starting out, you just wouldn't like. It's like a fairly deep thing, and to even realize what the question is you should ask. Whereas today, an AI looking at that code would point out to you, hey, this is like a much better way of doing what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Or you can even just like do so much more than is possible otherwise. Like for myself, I've always been like an infrastructure back-end kind of person. My front-end skills are a little bit atrocious. The way that I used to work is that I would basically just do like the hackiest possible HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and then have a designer come and like, sort of clean up my mess. And now I don't need to. And so for me, I just feel like it just supplements me in a way that I've always wanted.
I love that. And as someone who's only capable of making horrific HTML, I'm with you. Have you interacted with an engineer recently where they said something about the way they're working and you said, wow, like what was that person doing that might have surprised you?
Well, I actually remember around December or so, one of the engineers on my team, who's absolutely phenomenal, one of the best engineers, I would say, in the world, telling me that he was getting a lot of value out of the ChatGPT desktop integration with his terminal. And that it was a very simple thing. He was just like, if there's an error in my terminal, I just ask ChatGPT, like, what went wrong here?
Yeah.
And it debugs it for me. And it's just like, you just realize the like little pieces of friction, right? It's like, obviously this engineer is capable of reading the error message, but it's annoying. It's like overhead, it's slowness.
Yeah.
And I think that what I see is people trying to find, where does AI map to their workflow? Where can it remove little bits of friction? And sometimes you're just like, that was it. That was the thing that made the difference. But the thing is, all of these things compound. And I think that people who are very discerning and people who are just really focused on their own productivity, their own tools, and it propagates into how people structure code bases, right? Because you think about, well, if I want to be using AI tools as much as possible, then how do I have code set up so that it's most amenable to AI? So fast tests, modular code, good readmes for the API definitions between things, all of that stuff.
It's almost like, I know everyone talks about AI as an operating system. I lived in a 20-person AI house in San Francisco, and I think that term was like thrown around all the time. And what I'm seeing now more and more with like these real-time overlays is that it's not just the foundation of how things are built, it's also watching over, for lack of a better word, and co-working or pairing with everyone in every single line of business. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is really phenomenal. And I think we're still at the beginning.
Okay, even at the beginning, that's this slope?
Oh, that was an exponential. Okay. That was an exponential. I think we're still just like at the point.
My acid reflux feels like it's a little bit steeper. For early founders right now, and that could be Silicon Valley early founders, or it could be an SMB solopreneur coach in the middle of their career. What are they building? What should they be building today?
Well, I think two things. Like one is honestly, there is so much to explore. That I think people should just like, if you have an idea, build it, right? It's like as simple as that. Like there is, the barriers to entry are the lowest they've ever been. They're gonna get lower, don't worry. But we're at a point now where it's just like, if you have a creative idea, you should see it, implement it, try it out. And I think that is maybe the highest order bit. If you're looking to build like a durable business, I think thinking about what are things that will benefit as the models get better and not be obsolete. And I think that things that require going into specific domains, building a lot of expertise there, that's the kind of thing that I think can be really durable in this time.
Okay, so vertical AI, applying your expertise, using AI to support that mission.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk around like lean teams, and I work with Fortune 500 enterprises that might have tens of thousands of employees, but we're seeing that there's a lot of traction that comes from having a lean team. What does a lean team look like today? Like, are you envisioning new roles, new processes? Do they still have daily stand-ups? Like, do you have a sense of how a team right now, a lean team, is functioning in the world?
It's a great question. And I think that this is the kind of thing where I think that almost the way that people operate has not yet caught up to the capability of the tools.
Totally.
And so, even simple things like AI note-taking tools really just open up a new possibility of like, do you really need everyone to sit in the meeting, right? It's like, do you actually have really good tools that can summarize and surface to you the right information? And some of these require integrations that I just haven't seen be good yet, right? What you really want is you want something like ChatGPT Pulse that just tells you, here's everything happening across your team, here's what you need to know, this person was missing this thing. You want that to happen in real time, right? That the AI is really being this mediator. But maybe you can build that, right? Maybe you actually can do that. And maybe it requires changing how your team operates to make sure that the AI has that context, and that if it's something that's like very sophisticated and requires a lot of the back context, you have all that there. This is probably true for development environments too, of like, if you want AI to not just sort of spit out code at you, which is only a small fraction of what software engineering is, right? Be able to operate your infrastructure, things like that. It could be very nice to be in a world where the AI has exactly the same environment and affordances that human developers do. And so I think that maybe it starts for me from really thinking about how to give AI all of that accessibility and all of those affordances, and then you build your processes around it.
I'm obsessed with this because enterprise change is taking 2-3 years. So having that builder mindset, even if you're in finance, is brilliant. Can we talk a little bit about ChatGPT Pulse? We didn't get to hear it a little bit in the keynote, but I would love to hear your perspective. You're always thinking about AI in the future. ChatGPT Pulse is one of the best proactive AI systems that I've seen. And it is putting proactive AI into the hands of really any user of ChatGPT. Can you talk a little bit about where you see proactive AI heading?
Yes. So, I think that at the beginning of the year, I tweeted something like, 2025 is the year of agents. I think that's a theme that a lot of people have said. And I think that Pulse is an example of an agent, which is very different from how people have started to think about agents, right? I think that this proactive agent category is something that just doesn't really exist yet because the models have not been good enough. But it's kind of no longer an excuse because the models are really smart. Yeah. And I think that what we have found is that it's just like where you want to go is you want this amplification of human intent through AI. And we view ChatGPT as we want to shift it to be something that is a goal amplifier that helps you achieve your goals. And that part of that is knowing what your goals are, and part of that is actually then being able to do something intelligent, be able to add value to them. And I think that it just makes sense that there's only so much that you either have attention for or really want to do in terms of managing a fleet of agents. Like, you want to do some of that, right? It's just like if you have the whole team, people working for you, you want to do a little bit of micromanaging, but not that much. You really want people who are going to go and be trustworthy and dependable and going to go add value and do good things and come back with great reports, or come back with like a suggestion of like, oh, you probably should, not be eating as much red meat, or, whatever the thing is. And so, and something like the example I just said really requires the AI to have the relevant context, right? It needs information to be able to give you good, actionable suggestions. And so I think that that's going to be a really interesting part of how these kinds of platforms get built.
And what I'm also telling audience and community and clients is that they also need like an SOP for goals. That a lot of these documents are knowledge gathering or relationship gathering, who's working on what, time gathering, when did we announce this versus this. But there aren't a lot of documents that completely declare what the goal of something is. And so do you think it's worth it making like a goals doc, like a goal engineering?
I think it's really interesting, right? It's like we're almost moving from like these like self-contained prompts a couple of years ago to now this like context engineering to, you think about like the goals and the high level, really almost containing all of the knowledge work in one place. Yeah. And I think once we have AIs that are as capable as a remote human, then you really need to start thinking about, well, what would a remote human coworker need in order to be effective? And you see this all the time where it's like someone wasn't there for the daily stand-up or whatever, and now they're confused. They don't know what's going on. They're working on the wrong thing, right? Like all of that happens for humans who have a lot of context. They're very plugged in. And so I think that we need as much sort of thought and attention to what does the AI need as we do for human coworkers.
Wow. And so just tapping into that, if it's as good as a remote worker, I get a lot of questions. Do you imagine that there's going to be like an AI workforce, or we're going to name all these AI agents like Derek, John, whatever? Do you think that we're going to have every single employee have a suite of agents? Do you think that there's management of that, or is it just they're working on their behalf? Like, what is that structure? What are you imagining the AI first enterprise with agents looking like?
Well, to some extent, all of the above. To some extent, we don't know. I think that AI presents a new opportunity to just like work in a totally different way from what we can imagine. We're seeing a little bit of it where it's like, okay, you take Codex, you ask it to do things, you sit there staring at your terminal. Okay, that starts to get boring. So you can run 5 of your codexes, right? But then it's like, well, actually managing 5 codices is like, it's just not very scalable. It's not very fun. So you're like, okay, I want really good interfaces for actually managing the agents. So that makes sense. And so will they have persistent personalities and memory? Well, in some ways it makes sense, but in some ways it's almost a waste of the possibilities of an AI, right? Because for AIs, you can control so many aspects of them that are difficult to control for humans, right? You can control what do they remember, right? What information do they still have access to? You can sort of fork them. You can make decisions about how much computational power they get. And so that there is some amount of threaded identity that I think makes sense, but it also feels like it's kind of limiting to just think of it as, okay, this is like one agent who did all this stuff yesterday and is doing more stuff now. So I think that I'll be very interested to see how we build around all these new possibilities. But I can tell you, just my main observation from 10 years of working in this field is that the answer will be more surprising than any of us can anticipate.
And how do you think we should deal with mass surprise? Like, how are we ought to maintain sanity through this?
Well, honestly, I think that a lot of this starts with small scale experimentation.
Yeah.
Like, you really got to try it out, because hearing the words, describing it, thinking about it is so different from just seeing it. And ChatGPT was a very surprising thing, but it now feels very natural, right? And I think that the fact that we got to try out ChatGPT when it was still 3.5, right? It's like that model compared to like the 20 billion parameter model today, right? It's like night and day how much better today's stuff is versus 3.5. But that was a moment where the world got to learn and got to adapt. And so for me, I think we just need to keep doing that.
It's so interesting just how you're talking about forking, because when people are looking at the new Sora app and then they think about it as just entertainment, I'm like, you're looking at it completely wrong. Like, the fact that one person can create X and that 50 or 50,000 people can fork off of that and continue to create, like, why is that limited to art or to video? Like, you should be thinking about code like that, images like that, processes like that. Like, I really do think that there is a infinite amount of forking.
Yes.
And that kind of finding those seeds are going to be even more important inside the enterprise.
I think it's a great perspective. I remember when we first were looking at GPT-3 thinking about, well, how will this change things? What can people use it for? One of my coworkers named Jakob, our chief scientist, and his collaborator Shimon were saying, well, I think that there's going to be a new way of writing, right? New way of collaborating, right? You could imagine that you have today you kind of have these sort of single documents that get produced like Wikipedia in a collaborative fashion, but what if you can easily have this AI collaborator who's like swapping different parts of it? And we haven't seen that yet. But I think we're starting to see it with Sora, which is super cool.
Like, Canvas was almost that a little bit, but it was more human with AI, and I was hoping, for more collaboration, but then all of a sudden we're seeing that in a multimodal way. It's really exciting stuff.
It is. And I think part of the reason we didn't see it as much with text is honestly because the models just have not been smart enough, right? It's like if the models were really coming up with the really clever stuff that's like kind of funny or that's like really insightful, that adds a lot of value, you could imagine these remixes starting to come to life there. So I think we will see it. I just think the models aren't there yet.
Wow. And when do you think they will be?
2 years, 1 year, 3 years, something like that. But the predicting the exact timeline is the difficult part. But I think it's like very clear it's in the possibility space.
Yeah. There's so much that you've shared. You've shared proactive AI, vertical AI, the importance of just getting your hands in there and actually building, the importance of figuring out what everyone else in your org is doing, right? What processes can we actually change? Lean teams and how they should function, collaborating with agents. We've covered so much. Do you have one piece of advice for every business leader watching this? And before you answer, some of them are incredibly excited about AI. They are using it every single day. Their kid is building bedtime stories every single night, right? And then you've got some that are like, yeah, I use it every so often. I feel like I'm not even using it to the full extent. And then you've got some that are still hesitant, which I still can't believe that. But you've got those three categories. How are you trying to inspire and lift up the business space? What's one piece of advice, one final thought that you would share with those folks?
Well, I think perspective is the most important thing here. And the way I think about AI is it's really about making computers useful, right? And you think about computers back in 1950 or 1960, right? Compared to 1980s, compared to a modern laptop. And you just think about the internet, right? Just so you think about how much more useful these computers are than what we had. And how much if your workforce was just to lose access to all computers right now, like there's no way you'd be competitive. There's no way that your business would continue. And I think we're moving to a world very rapidly where the same will be true for AI adoption, right? Because AI is about imbuing this sort of human amplifier, this amplifier of intelligence into the computer, bringing it much closer to you to then be able to carry out your intent and do whatever business function people want. So I think that having this perspective of both how important AI will be to your company and that it's an exciting thing, right? That there's an opportunity here that no one else has tapped, no one else in your market has tapped. And so I think that those who really lean in and figure out how it can add value, and that we try to add a bunch of, you can look at things like our agent kit and these other tools that we've been bringing to bear that let you add in the guardrails, control what information's in there, think about enterprise controls, all of those things. Like, we're here to help.
Unbelievable. And also, I just want to say the guardrail release, love that. Like, I'm very excited to show that off. Let me just ask a follow-up and then we'll wrap. We talked earlier about competitive advantage. You had mentioned speed of iteration. And then you're also saying, listen, we're going to be at a point in time where if you haven't adopted this, not only have you lost your competitive advantage, you don't exist anymore. So what does competitive advantage look like? And maybe it is speed of iteration. Maybe it's just constantly changing and then adapting your perspective. But do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I do think that there's something that is very hard for AI to magically replace, right? Of like real domain knowledge. And we see it, is that there is a G in the AGI of general, where the AI just gets better at all these different domains at once. But to really figure out how do you make AI useful in education, there's all these different stakeholders, right? There's the parent, there's the teacher, there's the student. You need to think about if the student is using one of these tools, like what information is shared with the teacher and the parent, all those things. And that's something where having these relationships, having a track record, really figuring out how to get good feedback, those are very difficult to have the technology itself be the main, at least at the current moment, the main driver for. And so I think that there is something that's very sticky about these deep domain expertise, and that's something that I think you can really lean into.
Sounds like the people who have loved people watching are going to be at a really strong advantage. People that are just able to witness the market and are able to then adapt, ability to grab feedback and jump on.
I think that's a great way to put it. And I think there's something, we're building AI, but it's really about the humans.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, if you guys have any questions, drop them below and I will try and jump on them. But Greg, thank you so much for this chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.